Well, welcome to Easter, this is my first holiday video that I'm actually posting. I was meant to post one on Christmas about Krampus, but you know what? I'll just wait to this year to do it. Don't worry, guys. It'll come out this year. Actually, I'm not gonna make too many promises. Well, anyway, this is my Easter video. We're gonna be talking about Easter and stuff like that, which is mainly about Jesus Christ, but also about the Easter Bunny. However, it's a bit odd. The Easter Bunny is a very odd thing. I mean, it's a bunny that has eggs. I mean, obviously rabbits don't lay eggs. They're a placental mammal, like we are. So, what can the Easter Bunny be, and what could its history and evolution be? So, what is exactly the Easter Bunny? Well, you know what? We're gonna find out today. And you know what? I'm gonna steal your idea, YSE. Don't worry about it, though. You didn't put a copyright strike on the spiky anteater monotreme Easter Bunny. So you know what? I'm gonna steal your idea. I'm gonna steal your idea of that lovable, cute little creature. However, I'm gonna put a twist on it. It's not gonna come from any modern monotreme, like the platypus or echidna, but it's gonna come from an ancient group of monotremes. So, I hope y'all enjoy, and we're gonna attempt to make the Easter Bunny a bit more realistic and plausible, even though it's some sort of fantasy creature. So, let's see if we can make the Easter Bunny nice. So, without further ado, let's start about the history of the Easter Bunny. Now, back during the Cretaceous period, there were types of monotremes that actually had teeth. These teeth could help them crush more invertebrates and other things of the sorts. So, these toothed monotremes existed, as well as beaked monotremes, which are the ones that exist today. No toothed monotremes exist today. Only the beaked monotremes. However, there used to be toothed monotremes. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and to say that maybe in this alternate timeline, some of the toothed monotremes survived. These toothed monotremes were more adaptable than others, and they survived all the way to 66 million years ago, around the time the meteorite hit, thus resulting into them surviving the chaotic meteorite, or the KPG extinction event that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs. And these adaptable toothed monotremes survived the extinction event and became some of the few monotremes that survived. Beaked monotremes do exist, so in this timeline, you will indeed see echidnas and platypi swimming about and walking around on land. However, toothed monotremes made it. However, unlike most monotremes, which are in Australia, which, is where they're at, because Australia is a bit odd. Sorry to anybody who lives in Australia, but you have egg-laying mammals, and that's weird. Just kidding. However, these monotremes, these more adaptable toothed monotremes, made it instead, while some would have had representatives in Australia, some variants, mainly the Easter Bunny's ancestors, made it to what we now call New Zealand. These odd monotremes usually had brown fur in order to blend in. They were more terrestrial and not really semi-aquatic. And they also had the beginnings of something that most mammals that are not monotremes have. The beginnings of external ears. However, these external ears are a bit different than placentals or marsupials. These are just tufts of skin near the ear hole, not exactly fused into the ear hole. And it's very odd, but it can help them here on land, as they're not really aquatic creatures, feeding on low grasses and insects and small vertebrates, like small tuataras, which can make up their diet as well. But they're also going to feed on plants. Some of them even began to stand upright on tops of trees in order to eat insects and even low-growing leaves, using sharp teeth that are fused into a sort of bunny rabbit-like incisor allowing them to rip through small twigs and branches to eat leaves and cut through them away. I wonder what that could lead to. Now, in New Zealand's past, most megafauna were large terrestrial flightless birds. However, it doesn't mean that some creatures that were not birds could fill in a small niche to feed on plants that were above. And as these monotremes began, they began to become more bipedal, convergently evolving with that of Australia's kangaroo or wallaby. Now, this is convergent evolution, and because these monotremes can't exactly support all of their weight on their two legs, they could probably turn their tail into a sort of third leg. Again, like a kangaroo. So this is convergent evolution. Thus resulting into these guys. These creatures are a very large type of bipedal monotreme on New Zealand. These species have extended ear-like structures to hear better, and again use their tails as a third leg, allowing them to stand up. Also, akin to many other monotremes, they have a specialized claw on their hand that delivers venom, so they are indeed venomous. This is present on both males and females, so if a large carnivore, mainly like a large hawk or something that was the main predator of New Zealand back then, attacks them, they can swipe at them and deliver a potent venom that can actually kill the creature that is attacking them. They are facultative herbivores, meaning that while they mainly feed upon plants, they'll occasionally supplement their diet with insects and perhaps even a little bit of scavenging. Females will sometimes congregate in social groups, meaning that they have more eyes and ears to look out for predators and to protect their eggs. Similar to a marsupial, they have a pouch, which is also more similar to a echidna. This pouch allows them to store their eggs, or egg, which they usually have only 2 to 1 egg. Once the babies hatch out of this egg, they will then begin to lap up the milk that sweats out in the pouch, which is nice for these kangaroo-like monotremes. However, once they see a predator, the members of the social group will let out a strange sound. Take a listen. They'll let out this strange sound across to alert the other members of the group that predators are near, and then they need to take cover. They can hop like a kangaroo, so they're very similar to a kangaroo. And if you go on New Zealand, many people originally thought that they were a type of kangaroo. However, further suggestions that they are not marsupials, they are monotremes. Now, this is very unique among the Easter bunny. Males have speckles and patterns on their forelimbs and their tails and such to impress females. Also on their ears, quotations. So they're doing quite well in the forests of New Zealand. So we have these odd kangaroo-like monotremes, the Astelia albanus, even though they're not really a bunny. However, while they were thriving on New Zealand, as well as the large flightless birds, there were something that was wrong in what we call nowadays as the Europeans. The Europeans began to colonize New Zealand as they did in our timeline. And they eventually found these strange kangaroo-like creatures that laid eggs. And doing what Europeans did at the time, they decided to take a couple with them to America to see what they could do with them. This was mainly for because they were kind of cute looking and other things, but also because they made some tasty meals. And they could also use their venom as weapons. So these creatures were tooken, and they were going to be used in ways that perhaps these monotremes did not want. Just kidding. They're mainly used for food and war. So, poor monotremes. But that's not the end of the story on what's going on this weird Easter. Now, on most Easter attire, besides bunnies, you can find yellow little birds slowly snuggling around and,
Jordan, those are actually baby chickens. Like, get your stuff right, you parsley and tar donkey. Like, come on, bruv. I
didn't want to have to do this.
You're actually making me rage quit. Oh, wait.
But like I was saying, you can find little birds. And I know most people are going to be like, yes, this is a chicken. A chicken. It probably symbolizes that most creatures give birth in the spring and such, blah, 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 blah. You know what? I'm not going to make it a chicken. Instead, I'm going to make it its own unique bird. And that's exactly what I did, introducing these boys. These odd flightless birds are also native to New Zealand and are a bit more northern in most parts of New Zealand. These birds had long legs and pretty plump bodies, so they somewhat resemble dodo birds, except they actually had predators, so they're a bit slimmer and more fast to dart through the trees and undergrowth of the New Zealand forests. They're most closely related to the kiwis of Earth, not the fruit, the bird. And so, these nimble birds fed upon the abundant insects here, and were quick, swift, and agile. And unlike their kiwi cousins, they actually lay decent-sized eggs. Kiwis, work on your eggs. It stretches out your whole organs. Whew. That's like a human giving birth to a 35-pound baby. Whew. So, these birds will be thriving, and as well as these strange kangaroo monotremes. However, like the kangaroo monotremes, they were taken. They were taken by the Europeans and were used for food and their feathers to make hats. However, it wasn't always destined to be bad for these animals. While the Europeans used some of them for other purposes, some thought how cute they were and decided to keep on with that prompt of being cute, and thus they domesticated them into some unique forms. First up, these kangaroo monotremes. They were a bit altered as well, and they bred them to have bigger eyes, shorter bodies, and more prominent features, thus resulting into these little guys. These little guys are equipped with white fur in order to survive the colder parts of North America. They also bred them to have larger eyes because, you know what, that's cute, and larger ears, quotations. And this made them look more like a bunny. They also basically made it to where their tails were a bit shorter and not really used as a third leg, meaning that they also relied more on their front legs to walk around, adjacent to a bunny. And, well, they are also not venomous anymore because who would want this? Which also makes them look a bit more like, a cute little bunny. Look at them. Look so cute. They look very similar. And thus resulting into these pets. Most pets around this time, consisted of dogs and cats, were also consisted of these little guys, which were mainly adored for children because how cute they looked, and also for traditions. They sometimes were bred to lay unfertilized eggs. They bred them to treat their unfertilized eggs with no parental care, and their fertilized eggs with parental care. The unfertilized eggs, which was altered with their DNA, was so weird, but the unfertilized eggs would be taken and painted into a nice, cool tradition in which they called Easter, which was, nice. So, now you have the Easter bunny. So, that was nice for these little guys. However, what did they do with the New Zealand birds? What did they do with these little guys? Well, they also domesticated them. They didn't really domesticate them for food because we have chickens and stuff like that for food. And like turkeys. So we didn't really need to do that with these birds. So what did we do with them? We also turned them into pets. These pets were a bit later than the monotreme rabbit pets and were more recent in terms of geologic times. Began becoming to enter the homes usually around the 1940s, which was very recently. They were mainly kept as pets with their plump bodies. They made them to have a bit more neoteny in their bodies, so they look a bit more like their chick stage, which looks like a chicken. So plump, fat bodies, puffy feathers, shorter legs, and bigger eyes. So they were just the cutest little pets. And their eggs were also taken and painted for tradition. So, nice. And there we have it. The history of the scientifically version of Easter in my timeline. So, guys, hope you've had a happy Easter today. And you know what? I hope y'all hop to that like button. You know, I'm not going to do that. Never mind. But anyways, hope y'all have a happy Easter. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.